off. All right, so welcome everybody to another SAP Community Call. Today we have a very special guest, Jan Schaffner, Head of Central Engineering for SAP. Jan, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Craig. Thanks for having me.
All right, and I know you are an extremely busy individual these days, both on the SAP side, but also on the home front, and integration is a key topic for you. I understand that you've carved out a wonderful amount of time for us today, even though personally you have a new baby on the way, so congratulations. And on the work side, SAP is a lot going on as well. So how are you finding the time? I mean, how are you finding the time for all of this? What's the secret?
Well, I guess the secret is people just put something in your calendar and then you make time.
That's how it works. Got it. Okay. Wonderful, wonderful. So you've got a lot to share with us today. I know there's a lot of people coming in, still piling in and everything like that. We are recording, so we will make the recording available. But in the interest of time and the interest of not overloading your calendar too much, I'd like to hand it over to you to get started. I know you have a couple of slides to share with us, and then we'll have an open Q&A with everybody that's online. So it is all yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Craig. So this talk is about our integration strategy, and then, let me talk for 20 minutes and then we have a conversation. So we believe that intelligent enterprises, and you heard us talk a lot about the intelligent enterprise, are integrated enterprises. And why is that? So personally, I think as we see with this COVID pandemic, what I have observed, just as an example, is that contactless payments are now pretty much everywhere, right? So no one is basically required to pay cash anymore, which is a function of digitization being accelerated in all aspects of our life. And the pandemic has helped accelerate some of it for sure. And just if we stay with this example of contactless payments, which obviously has a clear benefit to end users, right? Who don't have to touch things or bring cash, can look at transaction histories in their wallet, on their phone. There are maybe also benefits to the businesses that at the end of the day run these transactions, right? Think about following up upon a contactless payment immediately with a survey on the product, gathering feedback, or using this to see demand spikes early on and maybe even being able to react to them in manufacturing. And to make all of this happen, you have to integrate all the way back from the contactless payment to all the processes that are provided by the systems underneath. And that's only possible if you run a truly intelligent enterprise. And at this picture, you see at the top what it's all about, which is enabling business processes, such as the one that I just talked about. In the middle, you see the applications that make these processes happen, which are the applications that form SAP's Intelligent Suite, with S4 in the digital core, as well as our cloud solutions for the LOBs, but then also experience management by Qualtrics all across, embedding feedback loops every step of the way. You also see our renewed focus on industries. That's where we historically have a lot of expertise, and we're doubling down, creating new offerings in that space, as well as our Climate 21 initiative, which is essentially about us taking all the data we have in the processes and helping businesses to understand if they are basically manufacturing in a green way, if they are purchasing climate neutral stuff or not, basically combining this data into the ability to assess how carbon neutral you can become as a company. And then at the bottom, the business technology platform as a foundation, right? Really the technical enabler for all the integration that we're building across these business processes. Now, drilling into the intelligent suite part a little bit, talking about our customer experience portfolio, digital supply chain, S/4HANA, with finance, for example, spend management with Ariba, or human resources management with SuccessFactors, as well as analytics with SAC across. Let's talk about how this business technology platform can do technical tricks to provide an integrated experience across these applications. Now, you might have seen that our CEO, Christian, has put out a renewed commitment for SAP to work on integration. It's on our website. If you check out this link, sap.com/cloud integration, you'll find this paper, which has concrete deliverables of what we are doing this year or in the next couple of quarters to concretely improve integration and deliver more seamless end-to-end processes. But don't go there just yet. You can also stay with me for a couple of minutes and I'll walk you through some of the highlights. So in this intelligent enterprise, we talk about 4 major processes. Lead to cash, which is about connecting the front office to the back office. Source to pay, which is about buying the right goods at the right time, at the right price. It's about recruit to retire, which is about holistically managing the workforce, both full-time employment, part-time employment, or contingent workforce, as they onboard, travel, get paid. And it's about design to operate, which is mainly on manufacturing and supply chain tasks. Now, these applications now are powered by some technical services which we provide in the business technology platform, which enable these 7 suite qualities, which you see here at the bottom. And I want to briefly highlight what is going on with those suite qualities and how they add customer value in the intelligent enterprise and when we're doing it. So talking about seamless user experience, right? So here the problem to be solved is not just that the UI looks delightful, but it's very tangibly also about reducing training effort in your user base, right? If multiple applications along a process have the same look and feel, then even for occasional use, users will be able to orient themselves much quicker in an application that they haven't worked with a lot. And along the lead to cash process, for example, we have already delivered this seamless user experience and harmonization. So here you see before and after images of all our lead to cash products, which are Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud, formerly known as C4C, S/4HANA Cloud, Service Cloud, and Customer Data Cloud, formerly known as Gigya. And for the other processes, this UX alignment has either already happened or it'll happen until the end of this year. Another thing I would like to highlight is the suite quality of providing a single workflow inbox. This is about the notion that many of our LOB applications give the users tasks to approve something, for example. And we ended up in a situation where we have as many inboxes to approve workflow tasks as we have applications. And now we are carving out the task management of all these applications into a central service on the business technology platform. And here you just see the UI on top, which is the ultimate business value that we're adding here, right? Which, as you can see, you now see as a manager approval tasks that are created from SuccessFactors, S4HANA, Concur, and Ariba, and so forth in a single pane of glass. But it's also about technically enabling this underneath so that you can also see tasks from, let's say, S4HANA that are relevant in your purchasing scenarios in Ariba going forward. So this will make things much more flexible. Another thing are end-to-end process blueprints. So what's this? Enterprise architects need to know, when we talk about these 4 end-to-end processes, what SAP applications exactly are involved in this process, what are the actual software components that are part of these processes, and then how do I implement these components, and where do these components talk to each other, right? And when they talk to each other, are these points where I can extend or change something in the process, and how do I do that? So if you go to the API Business Hub, that's on api.sap.com, you can navigate to processes and check all of this out. Here, what we're doing is we're talking about the recruit to retire process. We clicked on onboarding employee, and now we see SuccessFactors, Employee Central Core, talking to cloud platform integration. And this integration point was now opened, and we drilled down to the actual API that manifests this particular connection point. And you can do this for all processes every single step of the way, without registration, by the way. Another thing which is very close to my heart, as the team is putting a lot of work in, is how we converge to an aligned data model. Think about the data that sits in the various application systems. So in S4HANA, you have an employee data structure. In SuccessFactors, you have an employee data structure. And in Fieldglass, you have an employee data structure. And now, obviously, in the recruit to retire business process, these applications engage in joint value creation, and they need to have the same notion of the employees. This is master data, which needs to be synchronized across these applications. So normally what this means for IT departments is to build mappings between any 2 applications and basically convert the employee structure from this application into the structure from that application. And you know, that's expensive because it requires you to build n square minus n divided by 2 mappings that are typically actually being maintained by your IT personnel. And what we're doing now is not just providing these mappings out of the box, but we're going a step further in that we are harmonizing those parts of the data model which are basically appearing in multiple SAP applications. So in this example, the joint core of the employee data structures in these applications becomes the SAP workforce person object in the SAP One data model. And we will speak only the workforce person data model every time any SAP application sends or receives data. This gives us out-of-the-box integration between SAP applications, but it also makes it, you know, much easier for third-party applications to just basically adapt to the workforce person model and be immediately able to talk to all SAP applications around the notion of an employee. And we will use this also in the API surfaces of our products. We will use it in predefined analytical content that we will ship and events. But most straightforwardly, we will, and we are using this to some extent, in a service for master data replication, which is also a business technology platform service, which is just there to add value behind the scenes. So this master data integration service now automatically exchanges the different workforce persons or other master data objects like product or customer between all the participating applications in these end-to-end processes. And that just happens without a customer having to do anything about it as part of the intelligence suite. And as of today, we have cost objects like cost centers and workforce person live between SuccessFactors and S/4HANA Cloud. But until the end of the year, we will cover 8 master data objects with this out-of-the-box capability across the 4 processes. And we have many more in the pipeline. So on the drawing board, we have, from a data structure alignment, worked on over 50 master data objects, which are now in the pipeline to be implemented in the applications along these processes. And here's a quick video of where you can see it in action. So we're in S4 Cloud, and we're creating a new cost center. And once we save this cost center and we switch to the SuccessFactors screen where we basically search cost centers, you can immediately see that the cost center we created in S4 is also there in SuccessFactors, as a simple example. Another suite quality is about security and identity management. This is a suite quality which is already completed across the 4 end-to-end processes. This is about providing single sign-on, right? No matter where you enter a business process, you should authenticate only once and then reuse that login. But it's also about the life cycle around user management. So as you adopt a lead to cash process, for example, how do you make sure the right users get created in the participating systems with the right roles, right? It's about provisioning, but then it's also about deprovisioning, right? If an employee of yours chooses to leave the company, how can you make sure you revoke access in a timely and compliant manner? The next suite quality is about lifecycle management. In particular, what we're doing this year is around 2 aspects. One aspect is the provisioning of applications that a customer has bought. That sounds simple enough. However, if you think about a broad business process like lead to cash, there can be up to 22 SAP systems that are involved in this process. So now configuring these requires coordination. So what happens here is if you choose to activate, then there are workflows which guide both administrators, but also subject matter experts through the configuration steps that are required to, at the end of the day, run a business process in the context of your company. The last suite quality, which I want to share with you before we wrap it up, is analytics, which we will both provide embedded with SAC in all the applications in the intelligence suite, but also if we think about pre-packaged content that goes across business processes, right? So at the end of the day, it's about analytics on the workforce management, recruit to retire, or lead to cash level, right? So Here's an example of embedded analytics. In this case, we are in S/4HANA. We go into dispute management. And from the dispute management, we can seamlessly look at a group of customers and disputes to find out more things that are going on around dispute managing, adopting a broader analytical view than just dealing with local transactions. All right.
It's a lot to take in.
That's a lot to take in, but we're wrapping it up. So essentially what I did is I walked you through this matrix, right? So we talked about the big processes enabled by the intelligence suite. That's on the left side. That's the rows you're looking at. And then we looked at the suite qualities, which Christian committed to you in the beginning of the year. And you can go to this link that I mentioned and check it out. And here are the delivery dates of when these suite qualities will productively be delivered to you along what process. And you see that it looks pretty good in terms of most things being delivered this year. We have a long tail of master data objects which need to be built into the applications, which take some time. And the cross analytics parts will basically take us into 2021. But overall, a lot of tangible things have already been delivered. Now, if you want to find out more about these 4 intelligent enterprise processes, check out roadmaps, right? And Craig can share the link to the roadmap tool in the chat if you're interested in digging further. So with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Craig,
we have a lot of questions already popping in. I will see if I can. So here, a question from the chat. Just curious, how come we don't see record to report as a process area, or is it assumed in the major process areas?
Well, record to record, this is probably talking about time recording, right? So that's probably part of the recruit to retire mega process. So even if you look at recruit to retire, right, you can break it down into multiple aspects, which is workforce planning, right? So here you start in SAC, you plan data, from S/4HANA financial data to see basically how much headcount growth, for example, can you afford in what area. And then it's from onboarding to then later also time recording. And I know that especially in field glass, we are building a time recording capability. The European Union put out a legislation that I think as of some point in time next year requires everyone to clock in and clock out, even in, let's say, office jobs for time recording purposes. And that's something that we're enabling with the capability, which will also be consumable as a separate process. So I guess the answer is you have to double click on these processes, and you can go to the API hub and do this drill down and basically get an overview of what capabilities are subsumed in these processes.
Okay. There is more happening in the chat. It's a little hard for me to catch it there, but I'll jump to the question window. We have several questions posted in here already. First one, when will the central workflow inbox be general availability, and which applications are already integrated? Is S/4HANA on-prem already in?
So in general, and thank you for asking the question. So you hear us talking a lot about the cloud, right? Along these end-to-end processes in the intelligence suite. We have heard a plethora of customer feedback who basically say, guys, you have to think about hybrid, right? Especially hybrid with S/4HANA on-premise. So we are essentially at the moment in the process to expand these suite qualities across such a hybrid scenario with S/4HANA on-premise. And we haven't basically committed a detailed roadmap for that particular item, but just for the cloud scope, right, of the intelligent enterprise, you will see, and that's also shown on this slide in the second column, that Q4, which probably means December this year, we will see GA of the workflow inbox. And actually, the answer is more nuanced. I think the workflow inbox itself is already GA, but by the end of the year, also we ensure that all the participating applications in these processes have the integration built and delivered so that you can actually benefit from it.
Now, the next question here popped up a little while ago. I'm terrified that it will be a very long answer because I personally want to see this one as well, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We'll see if this is one that we can cover in the call or if this is one that we have to take offline to another call or something. Great harmonizing the business data model. What is happening with the technical data model? Having a harmonized data model for performance and support data would help working cross-application. Yeah. That feels like it could be a very long answer and detailed answer, which I'd be excited personally for, but I'll leave it to you whether we can cover that now or not.
Let me just say that like we have to separate conceptually between what we call the public domain model and the actual data model that is technically in these applications. Now, especially if I hear about performance and other non-functional requirement, it seems like the person who asked the question here is assuming that we actually replace the full data model in the existing applications. But that's technically not what we're doing. So because along the recruit to retire process, for example, you don't need all the, I think, 280 fields or so that SuccessFactors has when SuccessFactors talks about the full depth and breadth of an employee, but you actually need a subset of it, which is also relevant for all the other applications in that process, but not for all the vertical functionality in SuccessFactors. So basically what we're doing is we create intersection sets of these data structures across applications, and then we extend them by industries, by customer extensions also going forward. And we make sure that this then behind the scenes maps to the data structures in the applications. New applications will also be natively built with this model, and that will also make life easier for cross analytics, right? Building the right models in HANA without having to replicate too much, but that's a longer journey. I hope that gives a rough indication or helps. If not, we can certainly take it offline.
Well, that one might be an offline one, as they wrote into the chat. Nope, I want the one data model principles applied to the technical data model to ensure applications actually work and can be supported easily. We need to take it off. Yes, so probably an offline one. But moving on to the next question. There's a couple here about storage location, data center location. So there's a couple of questions related to this. This particular question, is the storage location, data center location for the master data integration configurable on entity data level? And can the requirement of storing, for example, personal data only in the country of origin be fulfilled?
Yeah. So first of all, if you look into how we internally go about SAP to SAP integration, we're basically building a set of services which are some sort of a fabric that provides dial tone capabilities in our cloud infrastructure, and we call those kernel services. And the master data integration service is one of those services. And for those services, we make sure that they are available in every region where we need them to be, because latency, for example, is important. Actually, in the implementation of that particular service, latency is not too important because we adopt an asynchronous replication model here, which is eventually consistent. But this is more of a tech ed discussion probably than Sapphire. But nevertheless, since you asked about GDPR compliance, for example, that's something the team has invested a lot of thoughts into. So basically, it is possible to, for master data objects that contain personal data, to explicitly track whether consent for use of this data has been given and for which purposes, right? So there's another kernel service in this technical fabric, which is basically a service for managing GDPR consent and privacy. And if the purpose is missing, deletion can be triggered both in the master data central storage facility, which is an event log, but also in the applications which are connected to it. At the moment, we don't plan configurability on the level of what data center does this run in, but indirectly via the GDPR requirements, you will be able to exert some control over it. Yeah, I guess that's the short answer.
Okay. Now we've got several questions popping in that they're all somewhat a little bit related, and it all goes to the not the SAP to SAP integration, but the SAP to non-SAP integration. For example, this one, my customer is using Salesforce.com for small subsidiaries and SAP S/4HANA for everything else. How do I integrate the two? API Hub, Cloud Platform Integration, Enterprise Messaging, SAP Graph, Data Hub, data, it goes on. And there's a couple of other ones in here about, but what about scenarios that include non-SAP products and lead to cache or design to operate processes? So a lot of questions along the lines of how do I integrate non-SAP?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we have to, and we are acknowledging that as much as we like customers who are wall-to-wall SAP, it's not always the case, unfortunately. So we're embracing also third-party integration. Now, you heard me talking today about what we're doing out of the box for SAP to SAP connectivity, but when it comes to third party, and I think I have a slide on this here in the appendix. Our basically capability that that we talk about is the integration suite, right? And the integration suite, again, has multiple constituents. So first of all, there's cloud platform integration, right? Which is our cloud-based middleware for cases where you have to do actual mappings. And while we control the data model for the SAP applications, we cannot exert that kind of control on Salesforce, for example. But we provide, with the help of open connectors, more than 560 adapters for third-party systems. And we will take this capability as a starting point and also bring this together with this one domain model that we talked a lot about today, right? So we will, for example, when we talk about the customer in our CX product suite, right? According to the one domain model, there will be an adapter in CPI, which basically connects the one domain model customer to the Salesforce customer and provide that mapping out of the box, and also be a starting point for extending that mapping. If the Salesforce side of the house, the customer has done some changes to it, right? But there are other aspects of the integration suite, and some were mentioned already, right? We also have, of course, enterprise messaging, which we will also connect to this one domain model story. So think about the workforce person example that we studied. Now we want to get to a state where in enterprise messaging, you find pre-configured events, maybe of the sort workforce person probation period expired, right? Which you can then subscribe to with custom extension applications and trigger some actions, right? Maybe trigger an additional evaluation of that employee before they go into maybe an unlimited employment term. So we're bringing this together. Also, data intelligence, right? This is more on the level of how do we look at the data at bulk level, so that we can provide analysis on top or run machine learning on top of the data that is basically in these systems. And here again, we will leverage the one data model like to semantically orient customers towards the data that they're looking for without, again, having to do data conversions in that. And I'm glad SAP Graph was mentioned. SAP Graph is something that we're working on. We have a public beta. If you go to beta.graph.sap, you can play around with it. This is our API layer, which exposes this one domain model as a CRUD interface. Now, this is interesting, right? Because, for example, if you talk about a sales order, for example, depending on what a particular customer is doing, the system of record for a sales order might be C4C or Sales Cloud, or it might be S4HANA Cloud. And it depends somewhat on the landscape, what the customer is doing. But SAP Graph enables you to write an application generically against this one domain model sales order, for example. And then SAP Graph will at runtime, depending on which customer's behalf this application runs, call, in that example, either Sales Cloud or S/4HANA Cloud, and do whatever CRUD operation has been triggered via that API surface. We have this in preview at the moment, so you can play with it and the APIs that we have there on mock data. The APIs will be stable, so now what we do is we add the actual backend connectivity over time, which will make it actually useful. But you can also see where we are with the progress, and you can also see where we are with this one data model, and what objects we have in mind and plan to cover. And the Graph Explorer is also structured around end-to-end processes. Again, long answer, but it was a tough question, I guess.
That's a very good answer. Very good. So speaking of data objects, another question: do we have a list of the master data objects that will be aligned by domain models? For instance, when will, for example, vendor master be harmonized across the suite? So I'm assuming they're looking for not only the list, but maybe a timeline or a roadmap of when each of these models will be.
Of course. No, like actually, we decided to not go live with this for Sapphire, but we have more than a list. We have a beautiful explorer where you can basically search for objects. You can see basically the relationship of these objects to dependent objects, like addresses, for example, or so, how they connect. What are the foreign key relationships to other objects? And then for the object itself, what are the fields and so forth? And we have 71 as of last week, which are basically part of this one data model. And we thought about making a bigger splash around Sapphire for this, but because at the moment, and I mentioned this earlier when I talked about the one data model, the hard work is not only about aligning these data structures, which is less than 50% of the work, but it's really making sure that this public data model is basically spoken by the applications, right? So you're basically trying to change the landing gear while the plane is in the air, and that takes a little time. And since our roadmap until the end of the year only includes 8 objects, which are customer, product, workforce person, task, asset, and a cost center, cost object, and 2 more, I guess. Sorry for not having this at the top of my head. We felt that the gap to the 71 that we have on paper is still too big for us to basically already give you this tool to look at it. But stay tuned, because we're working full speed on this.
And since you just mentioned cost center, one of the questions: will the cost center replication and other objects also be available with the S4 on-prem end of 2020?
So I think so. With S4HANA on-prem, basically what we do is once a year we take all the stuff that has been built for S4HANA Cloud and we package it from a functionality perspective also into the on-premise release. And I am basically, the cost center integration was first delivered, I think, in May this year. I think the S4 on-prem release is based off the August release of S4HANA. So I'm 80% sure that for cost center, the answer is yes. But someone should validate this. Maybe me. This is just the reasoning I'm applying.
Understood. So the potential is there, but we
Yeah.
will come back with a more valid or concrete answer later on. So we did enable voting for questions, so people could upvote questions. And this particular one jumped to the top of the list. A little bit less technical in terms of what the question is, but the answer is probably a very technical one. What is the most challenging part of implementing the integration?
You know, and I'm very passionate about this topic, but I think, and I also heard this from many customers and enterprise architects and CIOs that I had the opportunity to talk to and listen to their feedback, is that people put in a lot of work in basically maintaining and running integration points across many applications in the IT departments, but they feel it doesn't add any actual value because it's essentially just done to keep the lights on, right, and provide the basic functionality. So I'm convinced that especially in that arena, with shifting these integration capabilities to the cloud, A, and B, taking this new approach, starting from our one domain model, will significantly contribute to that. Or is the question more like within SAP's development force? What's the
That was the extent of the question. So I think they were just kind of looking to see.
Yeah. So
we'll see if they add a follow-up. Not a problem.
I mean. So what I can say, and I'm in this. So my job is actually to build this bridge, right, between these technical services that are the enablers for this integration and how we build them and adopt them in the applications. Also building some of these foundational services, but also making sure that the rubber hits the road in the applications. And that's just SAP has 29,000 developers across the globe. So that's a big project management task to balance this, make sure it's, in everyone's backlog in a somewhat synchronized form, because it doesn't make sense if you talk about a process and only 20% of the applications along a process support a certain capability at the right time, and how we steer this as a company. But we have, I think, gone through a huge cultural shift over the last 2 years, I would say, where the developers, have, I think, shifted their thinking from the importance of, features, functions locally in these cloud properties or SAP applications, to really also seeing the customer value that can be driven from integration. So I guess this project also has a cultural and coordination component to it, which is huge.
Absolutely. All right. So here's an interesting question, all about the end-to-end processes and more around the idea of integral testing, in particular with the solution manager suite. Are we looking in that direction, or is that a possibility?
Yeah, so there is this next-gen solution manager for the cloud, Calm. I don't know if you heard about it. That's definitely a piece, but ultimately, and I'm not sure if the question is hinted that way, but we want to get to a state where we provide out of the box the capability for someone who builds an extension application in the SAP ecosystem to have that test in the context of an end-to-end process in the intelligence suite, right? So basically, if you extend something around the customer, right, there should be some out-of-the-box test cases for, can the CX applications deal with that, or is something breaking? And here we are delivering CI/CD templates. We plan to deliver these templates, I have to say, very carefully. But this is something where we're wrapping our heads around, and it's for sure one of the big themes for us, also in the business technology platform going forward, is to give customers the tools to drive greater development efficiency and speed, in particular about extension cases, and that includes testing them along end-to-end processes for sure. So, but it's also a very complex topic to get going.
Right. So we're actually coming close to the end. We got about 5, maybe 6 minutes left. So enough time for 1 or 2 more questions. This one that just popped up is quite interesting. It's not really a question, more of a statement, but I think that it could lead to some interesting conversation. So looking forward to seeing what the standardized approach is to be between the LOB solutions and the SAC with regard to data transfer and data availability.
Yeah, so this is a journey for sure, right? So so semantically, and I mentioned this, the starting point will be the one domain model, right? So you will see analytical capabilities with vocabulary such as workforce person, for example, in pre-packaged models, which I think is a huge benefit. But then technically, right, we need to involve, as we embed SAC into multiple applications, for example, in an end-to-end process, right? Not only is it the same SAC tenant, but what does it mean with regards to how the data is accessed underneath, right? So for some cases, federation out of a central SAC instance into LOB application data stores will not be good enough. And we need to also provide some out-of-the-box replication capabilities. Here, there is a lot of work going on with HANA Cloud Service, and basically a data lake component that we are adding there, which will basically solve some of these problems, and then in the long run provide, and that's where we're going, a configurable performance versus price ratio. Like you configure essentially how much data in the data lake is also in memory HANA aspects, in the cache, and how you manage these data sets. And last year at Sapphire, we talked about Data Warehouse Cloud, which also does some interesting things around how you manage this data and its locality in spaces. So that's also something interesting to look at in that regard.
All right. And we have 3 minutes left, so enough time for one last question, but I also did write into the chat that anybody who didn't get your question answered now, we will be following up in the SAP community. So if you have additional questions, go ahead and get them in there now, and we'll do our best to follow up with all of them later on. But in particular, I wanted to bring up this question because it is also an opportunity, I think, for everybody out there. Integrating the cloud apps is very important, but what about functions with S/4HANA, for example, TM or EWM, that are still not very well integrated? And before you start to answer, I'm seeing this as an opportunity. How can the community bring up topics like this going forward? And as you said earlier, we have a lot, and we're focused on these, and then we're going to focus on these and these. How can they help to make SAP aware of the ones that are most burning for them?
Yeah. So the approach that we have taken was to spend times with the user groups, right? So both DSAG and ASAC or Sujin, we make sure we check in regularly also with their leadership, because it aggregates a lot of customer voice and then also pain points that they have that can help us with prioritization. But in addition to that, right, so we talk to the SAP mentors, right, who also continuously provide us feedback. But I guess essentially how to collect this feedback in a broader audience in a structured way, it's probably exactly formats like this where we should do this, right? And then but I guess technically not a very high fidelity option would also be to just send me an email or I don't know, connect to me on LinkedIn or whatever, and you know, just connect, and you know, we'll try to address and prioritize and take the input.
And maybe to save your inbox a little bit, I will recommend to everybody follow up in the SAP community, for example, on the blog post announcing the replay of this call and things like that. Will maybe be a little bit easier on Jan's inbox, but he did offer, so you know, yeah. Take your pick. But Jan, thank you so much. We are at that top of the hour, and I know you have a lot going on. And I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to the SAP community. We look forward to having you again in the near future. You know, we're excited that you're willing to carve out the hour to share all of these updates with us.
And thanks everyone for participating. Fantastic questions. You know, that's fun, right? A super engaged audience, apparently. So thanks all of you for taking the time. It has been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone. And again, we will take the remainder of the questions we didn't get to, and we will be following up those in the SAP community going forward. So thank you, everyone, and have a great day, and stay safe and healthy.